Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning, Tuesday all day. Welcome to Penn Vicarage. Nice to see you, and thank you for joining us for our Bible reading for today as we continue our adventure through the Psalms. And today we're in Psalm 72. So without further ado, Psalm 72 it will be. Give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to a king's son. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. May the mountains yield prosperity for the people, and the kings and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the needy, and crush the oppressor. May he live while the sun endures, and while as long as the moon throughout all generations. May he be like rain that falls on the mown grass, like showers that water the earth. In his days may righteousness flourish, and peace abound until the moon is no more. May he have dominion from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. May his foes bow down before him, and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and of the isles render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts. May all kings fall down before him, all nations give him service. For he delivers the needy when they call, the poor and those who have no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy, and saves the lives of the needy. From oppression and violence he redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight. Long may he live. May gold of Sheba be given to him. May prayer be made for him continually, and blessings invoked for him all day long. May there be abundance of grain in the land. May it wave on the tops of the mountains. May its fruit be like Lebanon, and may people blossom in the cities, like grass of the field. May his name endure forever, his fame continue as long as the sun. May all nations be blessed in him. May they pronounce him happy. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who alone does wondrous things. Blessed be his glorious name forever. May his glory fill the whole earth. Amen and amen. The prayers of David, son of Jesse, are ended. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, right. We'll start with the context of what's going on here. Firstly, to say there's a little verse on the end. It says here, the prayers of David and of son of Jesse are ended. This effectively means that it's the end of book 2 of the 5 books of the Psalms. So Psalms 42 to 72 are what's called book 2. And it's a lot of the Psalms in book 2 are songs of specifically written by David. And it's interesting, it says the prayers of David, son of Jesse, are ended. So clearly, in the Old Testament times, the psalm, what we call the Psalms, were known as the prayers. So these are considered the prayers of David. So that little clunky little verse at the end essentially means that we're at the end of book 2 of the 5 books of the Psalms. That's the first thing. The other bit of context is who wrote it. We're not quite sure because it says at the beginning of Solomon. Now, it's interesting this because this could mean various things. It could be it was written about Solomon, in fact, the King James Version of the Bible, and the Septuagint, which is the version of the Old Testament that was knocking around in common use at the time of Jesus, the one they used to use regularly, the Greek translation, Septuagint, in that has written about Solomon too. So it could be about Solomon. So it could be that someone wrote the psalm about Solomon, including possibly, I quite like this idea, that David in his kind of dying breath wrote it on behalf of his sons. It could be, it reads a bit like that. So it could be about Solomon. It could, on the other hand, be by Solomon. It could be by Solomon about his son, although Rehoboam was an arrogant little tyke, and you'd struggle to get this anywhere near him because he wasn't a very nice man. So it's quite unlikely that Solomon wrote it about his son, or quite likely, and I think most scholars would probably say Solomon wrote it about himself. So there we go. So anyway, it's a psalm. It's either by Solomon or about Solomon. And it's all about kingship and about rule and power and so on and so on and so on. So what does it tell us? Well, I just want to focus on 3 things, if I may, this morning. Firstly, it tells us about the blessings of power, but it also tells us about the responsibilities of power too. The blessings of power are very clear. It says, may he be like, may he live while the sun endures, as long as the moon throughout all generations. May he be like the rain that falls on the mown grass, and so on. In his days may righteousness flourish, and may peace abound, and may he have dominion from sea to sea, and may his foes bow down before him, his enemies lick the dust. You get the idea. There are huge blessings in here of power. And whoever's writing this, presumably about Solomon, is praying that these massive blessings may be upon him. But also in here, very clearly, are the responsibilities of power too. And it's interesting, right at the very beginning, it says, "Give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to a king's son. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice." So there are responsibilities of power. Firstly, principally here, is of righteousness. It's about being right before God. That's the number one thing, that he stays right with God. Secondly, that he administers justice. So this is, you hear so many countries in the world where there's problems with corruption, and places could go so much better, but it was not for injustice and corruption in high places. And he's praying here that this king Solomon he will be righteous, that he'll be right before God, he will walk closely with God like David did. He's praying that he'll execute justice and righteousness, that he will show no partiality to anybody. He'll do what is right. Then he goes on, may he defend the cause of the poor of the people. So he doesn't just spend time looking out for himself or looking out for his friends, but he's looking out for the poor people too. And deliverance to the needy and crush the oppressor. That he does what is right. He stands against injustice and for the cause of right. How the Book of Common Prayer put it, the punishment of wickedness and vice, and to the maintenance of thy true religion and virtue. So, this psalm is about the blessings of power, but it's also very clearly about the responsibilities of power too. And I think there's a huge message actually for anybody in power, and it's right that we have Christian people in power too. It's right actually that people who are Christians should stand for high office, and we should pray for them. But Psalm 72 is very clear that yes, there are blessings of power, but also there are huge responsibilities of power too. And we need to pray for our government, we need to pray for our bishops, we need to pray for our local councils, and we need to pray really for them. So here in Psalm 72, it's about being a king, and praying for the king, but it's about the blessings of power, but also not forget the responsibilities of power, particularly righteousness, justice, and defending the poor. So that's that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it was written about Solomon. Now Solomon's an interesting character because he started well. Right in the early days of King Solomon, he took over from his dad. He started very well. He started right with God. He has that blessing, that dream when he asks, do you want riches? And he prayed, what do you want me to pray for? And he prays for a right judgment. So he starts very well. What becomes very clear, though, if you follow the life of Solomon, is that he started well, but he ended badly. The trappings of power got to him. He had hundreds of wives and hundreds of concubines, and basically the blessings of power went to his head. Yes, he did get the Queen of Sheba did come and see him. So Seba and Sheba did bring presents and so on and so on, quite right. But in the end, unfortunately, those blessings of power got to his head, and he was hugely rich. And in the end, injustice got the better of him, and he started worshipping other gods and other things. So Solomon started well, but he went off. And in the end, like I said, his son Rehoboam was just a horrible, arrogant individual. So when he took over, it didn't last very long, and the kingdom was split. And the rest, as they say, is history. And the kingdom which had been united under David was split under Solomon's son, an arrogant and young type called Rehoboam. So the message of Solomon is that Solomon started well, and in the early days, this applied to him very well, Psalm 72. But he went off. And I guess the message to us really is that for many of us who've been Christians a long time, we may have started well, but the importance is remaining righteous, remaining close to God, and making sure that, unlike Solomon, we can start well, but we finish well too. So here's a message for us here. There's quite a warning here in Solomon. Solomon, as I say, started well, very well, but ended by going off. And we need to watch out that we make sure that, as with Jesus put, the cares of this world don't stunt the growth. So we need to make sure that we stay close to God. The third point to make about this is Christians from early days considered this to be a psalm which is applicable to Jesus. That actually Solomon may have gone off, had the trappings of power, but Jesus actually continued right. That he stayed good to the end. And lots of Christians through the years have applied this, although the New Testament doesn't. and have applied this to Jesus' just and gentle rule. And in fact, if you like hymns, there are a couple of particularly well-known hymns that are about this. Hail to the Lord's anointed. Who goes? Hail to the Lord's anointed. Hail David's greater son. So Solomon may have felt it, but Jesus is the greater son. Hail in that time appointed his reign on earth become. He comes to break oppression, to set the captives free, to take away transgression and rule inequity. So the hymn by is it Montgomery or someone who wrote Hail to the Lord's anointed. Yeah, Montgomery. That's all about, this is taken from Psalm 72. And the other hymn that you might remember, which you might not know, is written by Isaac Watts. Jesus shall reign where'er the sun doth his successive journeys run. His kingdom stretch from shore to shore, and moons till moons shall wax and wane no more. So read those hymns at some point. Next time you find yourself singing them in church, you know they're taken from Psalm 72. So, 3 things about this Psalm 72 this morning. Firstly, it's all about, in glowing terms, the blessings of power, but also about the responsibilities of power. And the two are clearly linked in Psalm 72. So blessings, but also responsibilities for justice, principally righteousness, and protecting the poor. Secondly, unlike Solomon, let's make sure that you and I finish well, that we don't just start off well, but we turn to God and remain with God and remain righteous through our lives. But thirdly, this Psalm 72 also can be applied to Jesus' just and gentle rule. He is, of course, the true King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and his kingdom leaders go on forever. Bless you, my friends. Do please feel to share these messages with your friends. Please click the share button at the bottom. God bless you. Thank you for watching, and more tomorrow.